Hello, and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Rob Daniel, Chief Revenue Officer of Data Society. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Brian Cobb, Chief Innovation Officer for Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport. Welcome, Brian.
Rob, thank you. It's great to be with you.
Great. Well, before we dive into our questions, it would be great if you could do a brief intro and share all our listeners a little more about your background.
Wonderful. And again, it's thank you to CDO Magazine for the opportunity to share who I am and what CVG Airport is about. CVG, otherwise known as Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport, Chief Innovation Officer now for going on 7 years. And the background behind that is previously with an airline. I joined the airport now about 15 years ago. Halfway through that point, we decided to create an innovation department. And really, Rob, if those that are familiar with the history of CVG would understand that our marketplace changed in the 2000s. We were once a large dominant hub for a major carrier in the US. We had to dynamically pivot our business model. And that business model included an opportunity really to create revenue streams. Typically, in an airport environment, the primary source of non-aeronautical revenue is parking. However, we don't have to look too terribly far back. Actually, you could look at the pandemic and recognize no one was flying. So suddenly the market fell out at that point for parking revenues. So perfect, really positioning for us to demonstrate how important it is to partner with startups, universities, and big corporations in developing product that can not only work for an airport like CVG, but also take it to other colleague airports around the world and potentially parallel organizations that are very similar in nature to an airport.
Wow, that's fascinating and something we'll have to dive in on. I think, you often don't think of airports as doing those types of partnerships. So I really look forward to exploring that more, Brian.
It is very unique.
Great. Well, let's see. Let's dive into the first one. So let's talk about culture. How do you approach cultivating a data-driven culture across all your different departments, whether that's air traffic control or concessions? Love to hear more about that, Brian.
Absolutely. It's recognizing first and foremost our position as the airport to really influence outcomes. We don't have direct control over air traffic control, for example, with the FAA, but certainly we can work with them in a dynamic fashion to recognize what is it that the airport can be doing to coordinate and collaborate with regulatory agencies such as the FAA, TSA, Customs and Border Protection, to really improve the outcome, the overall experience of our traveling consumer. And oh, by the way, just as important to really improve the experience for our on site working staff. A happy worker makes for a good customer experience. So, what is it that we're using as far as talent and technology to really accelerate the overall experience? And then, really beyond that, it's again collaboration. Recognizing first and foremost the term innovation itself really means so many different things to so many different people. I actually prefer not to use innovation as much as possible. It's more about change management, and it's working with those collaborative organizations across our campus, recognizing that an airport is much like a city within a city, working with those organizations across the campus to really support and facilitate that change management approach. What are we doing to improve our business over what we did yesterday? And are we accelerating the overall experience with, again, our consumers and frontline employees to really propel CVG into a competitive advantage over other airports? So ideally, tenant carriers, tenant airlines are more interested in flying out of CVG for economic purposes, for efficiency purposes, overall operational delivery, that produces an overall product that is far superior than our competing airports around us.
Very interesting. And maybe talk a little more about city in a city. When we were prepping for this, Brian, I thought that was a really interesting way to think of an airport.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, it really is fascinating. And I'll use a startup ecosystem as a perfect example. When we started speaking to startups, frankly, we were cautious in sharing that we were an airport because we learned very quickly when we said, hi, we're from CVG, very quickly those startups would say, I don't have a product actually that works for an airport. Never thought of it that way. So really, we pivoted and we went what I would say under the radar. We would wait until the 11th hour to share that we were an airport. Of course, that conversation would ensue of, well, again, not sure if I have a product that fits your need, but it worked both ways. We first said, totally hear you, but we're really a city within a city. We have all of the accoutrements of a major city. So if you think about police, fire, infrastructure, we have all of the, again, the accoutrements of a major municipality. So from that perspective, startup, reconsider your value proposition. I think we can reposition ourselves more in an important, valuable manner for you if you bring that product within our city and really use our laboratory, our massive airport, as an accelerator for your product. Think about the 9 million plus eyes that will be seeing it on an annual basis. Think about the campus wide 16 to 17,000 employees that can be using your product. Again, when you pivot to that city within a city ecosystem, suddenly it opens up a vast array of opportunities. And then, really, last positioning is it's very quick for folks to understand. Oh wow, if I do view it as a municipality, if I do view it in that large campus type of approach, there are parallel industries that mimic. Again, so can you take your autonomous vehicle, and if it works at an airport, can it work out on the public streets? If we're using a robot, similar fashion, can it actually pivot to be used at arenas or even a hospital? At the end of the day, we process people, a lot of them. So, how is it that we can really leverage our position to process people within a very talented employee group to really accelerate that talent and technology forward?
That's fascinating. Wow. Very interesting. And what about data adoption? Like, what are some of the strategies you found for driving data adoption across all these like diverse worker groups?
Sure, great question again. I would not be surprised. Many people would find themselves very similar to us. You're sitting on a treasure trove of data. That data has value. The old adage, cash is king. It's now data is cash is king. So, how do you monetize that data? How do you leverage it for the greater good? Understanding our ecosystem and that municipality type of ecosystem, just a tremendous amount of data. So, ironically, we sat down very early on and looked at our security checkpoint. To many people, perhaps that would be the biggest challenge along the way in their travel journey. We recognize that. So our interest there was, what data can we actually pull? What can we, going back to the collaboration aspect, share with our TSA colleagues and our airline colleagues to say, here's what's happening at a moment by moment basis. What is it that we're going to do to improve, again, over what we did yesterday, to reduce that wait time, to make sure that customers come in, we reduce the level of anxiety associated with not only travel in general, but also just to get through security and to get to their gate where they're most comfortable. And once they're comfortable at their gate, typically, if they've had a great, easy experience, suddenly that'll start improving concession revenues. It'll improve their overall experience and use in and around the airport of finding their way. So truly, we started with the security checkpoint as our first innovation type approach. And it was using, we'll end on this, it was using Bluetooth and Wi-Fi sniffers. Back then, it was just Bluetooth. We can't actually identify who individuals are, but if you have Bluetooth activated on your cell phone or other mobile equipment, it just drops a pin on a map for us. And then you start triangulating what's the difference between 2 points and uh, anonymize that. And of course, in addition to that, aggregate it, and now you have an average wait time. So we were the first airport in the US way back in 2014 to actually illustrate to our customers what the actual wait time was and share that with our TSA colleagues. Again, first in the airport or first in the US. And really, it set the tone for other airports to follow in like kind very quickly.
Wow, that's a great innovation, especially back in 2014. And if I could ask, like, what were some of the changes you were able to drive now that you were the first airport to have that type of data?
Sure, we were incredibly fortunate where it's almost the classic if you measure it, you can improve it, right? So just simply sharing our wait times, our colleagues were frankly astonished. And I will quickly say, is it the airport's responsibility to address that? Way back then, it was very much viewed as that's TSA and that's the airline. The airport really doesn't have a say. We interjected ourselves all the way back to where we started this conversation. We positioned ourselves in a position of influence. So because it was kind of a, dare I say, a finger pointing exercise of whose long queue, whose responsibility it was, we just jumped in and said, look, it really doesn't matter. Let's just try to figure out what the challenges are for our customer because they all belong to us. TSA, you're producing a product. Airline, you're producing a product. And it's really our home. So, what are we doing to position the best possible experience overall? And that culminated in aggregating that data, tracking it on a daily basis, and illustrating it. Once we started illustrating it, miraculously, our 45-minute wait times reduced to 30, and reduced to 20, and then reduced to 15. So it just continued to reduce. And the benefit overall, of course, and many people will remember this, is that pre-check wasn't a thing back then. In the meantime, pre-check was added. The canine units were added to the TSA. So there have been improvements, of course, along the way, but we've also been able to use that technology to adjust and to report here's your pre check wait time, here's your general wait time. You have a choice, customer. So even though you might be pre checked, that because of the queue, it might be longer today. You might want to jump into general. So we're giving customers options to pursue what's the best path for them.
Great. Well, Brian, thank you so much for joining me today. And to our audience, for more interviews and insights, please visit cdomagazine.tech.
Rob, thank you so much. Great to be with you again.